This is a re-recording of a bird chat we did a few days ago on Christmas bird counts, and I wanted to re-record it to prove it a little because it's a very important topic. And so here we go. And many of these slides on the history were developed by Susan Tomey Barrett on our team. So I'm going to tell the history of the CBCs, how to find out about CBCs and join them, long-term bird population research, what to do as a beginner, and I'm going to profile our local CBCs and bird population trends. The Christmas side hunt was a holiday tradition. Hunters would choose sides, go afield with their guns, and see who could amass the biggest stack of feathered and furred quarry. But in 1900, on Christmas Day, ornithologist Frank M. Chapman proposed a new tradition, a Christmas bird census. That first year, 25 counts were held with 27 birders from Toronto to Pacific Grove, California. A total of 90 species were counted. National Audubon leads this effort, and last year, CBC volunteers counted over 40 million birds in 2,100 areas. The CBCs run December 14th through January 5th each year, and each area has at least one CBC, and these are the ones we have in Central Florida, which I'm going to profile, and I'll post this slide with the contact information at the end. And you can volunteer at any CBC, not just the ones near you, if there are openings. How do you find the CBC, Christmas bird counts, in any area? Just Google Audubon Christmas bird count, and you'll come to this page that has all the people in the jackets, and scroll down here to where it says join the Christmas bird count. And then this will come up, this map of all the CBCs in the United States, and the green circles and the yellow circles are counts that are open and that you can contact the compiler. So how do you contact the compiler? By the way, these are the counts in Central Florida. If you zoom in on that map and just click on the icon in the center, and the compiler's name will come up. An email that you can contact. And you'll ask the compiler, is the section that they might have available for a newcomer, is it a walking section? Is it by car? Is it, and they obviously will put you with experienced birders when you're joining as a newcomer. Now I'd like to talk a few slides about Christmas bird count data and how it has contributed to conservation. Combined with information from the Breeding Bird Atlas and other surveys, it provides a picture of how the continent's bird populations have changed in time and space over the past 100 years. It's 123 years old. The long-term perspective is vital for conservationists. It informs strategies to protect birds and their habitat. What's been learned? Audubon's 2007 Common Birds in Decline report showed many of our much-loved birds have taken a nosedive over the past 40 years, like the bobolink and the black duck, which is a duck of a little farther north. And this was based on CBC data. The State of the Birds 2009 report by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service showed how 70 bird species are at a tipping point, again, based on this long-term data. And Audubon's 2014 climate change report showed that climate change could affect the range of 588 North American birds. More than half will likely be in trouble. 314 species will lose 50% of their range by 2080. And examples are the eastern meadowlark and the boreal chickadee, which Susan took this photo of on our recent trip to Maine. And the EPA, U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, has included Audubon's climate change work as one of 26 indicators of climate change. And examples are that of birds affected by climate change are the black rail. And we recently had the North Shore Birding Festival, and we had a black rail trip lined up in the St. John's River National Wildlife Refuge, St. John's National Wildlife Refuge in east of Orlando. And because of flooding from Hurricane Nicole, the habitat for the black rail was damaged, and our leaders could not find any, so that trip had to be canceled. The range of the black rail is very specific. They nest and live in salt marsh, the high marsh, which with sea level rise is being narrowed, that range, with people having developed on the other side. And so it is now listed as a threatened species on the endangered species list. And the salt marsh sparrow similarly breeds and lives in a very narrow range of salt marsh. So how to view trends using this very cool tool developed by National Audubon. Just go to that same page where you look for how to find a CBC, and there's this link, Audubon's Christmas Bird Count Trend Viewer. And you can actually pick a specific bird to see the trends, like the American robin, for example. Some of us have noticed that we aren't seeing as many robins in the winter. Our robins come in the winter and eat the palm berries and the Brazilian pepper and all that, but we haven't been seeing them as much. And then this data shows this. The burgundy color is decreasing and the blue color is increasing. So possibly due to climate change, they are wintering farther north. Another example is the western kingbird. Again, the burgundy is where it's declining. So the normal range of the western kingbird in Texas, possibly habitat has been lost for various reasons, and they're showing up more and more in the east. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the local CBCs and their history. The first Central Florida CBC was the Orlando CBC, and past OAS board members, Mary Keim and Mirandy Snyder, participated in the 1970s and early 1980s, and that's how I have this information. But with that CBC now discontinued, the longest running one in Central Florida is the Econlockhatchee CBC, which started in 1982. That one is over here in Winter Springs, Oviedo, and includes some important lakes and part of the St. John's River. This lake is Lake Jessup, and this lake is Lake Harney. Now notice it's a 15-mile diameter circle, and the part of the St. John's River between Jessup and Harney is not on it. So if you're lucky enough to get to do this count, which I am, you can't count that part. But and so what's in this count? Lots of lesser scaup. Now they're very skittish. It's hard to get a good view of them, get a photo of them. But on these two lakes, there are big flocks of them in the winter. And then a very cool gull, the Bonaparte's gull, is seen in that count. And roseate spoonbills are one that have been increasing over the years. And historical data, like from the Seminole Wars of the 1830s, on Bird Island and on Lake Jessup, they saw the roseate spoonbills. They had they used the Indian name Ahonoli or something like that, and but they were extirpated for feathers, possibly meat. But now they are coming back bit by bit. And not every year, but frequently we see the white pelicans. But as a rarity, we might see brown pelicans, which normally are confined to the coast. And we've seen snail kites. This one was from 2018. And but not all the people in this count get to do the boat trips. Others will be doing hiking, birding in the Charles Bronson Forest, the Little Big Econ State Forest, the protected lands in that circle, and can also see some good birds. The compiler, Lorne Malo, will pair you with other good birders if you contact him, and I'll bring that contact information up again at the end. And these are some birds that Lorne shared with me that had been seen over the years, some unusual birds that have showed up in that count, which has gone since 1982. It's now our longest, 87, our longest count. Okay, well, now I'll turn to the Zellwood CBC, which began in 1987. Well, it was the Mount Dora CBC with involvement of Wekiva Valley Audubon Society, OVAS. And then OVAS moved that circle to Emerald Marsh in 1995, and the Zellwood Mount Dora area was split off as a separate count. West Biggs used to be the compiler, and more recently, it's Gallus Quigley. And well, as that slide shows, it includes the Lake Apopka North Shore, part of Lake Apopka, and into Lake Dora. So it's a good area. It's one where the same birders have done it for many years, and you may not get a response from Gallus if you're a newcomer, but you could give it a try. Some of the cool birds in that count are the fulvous whistling ducks, which weren't here at the very beginning. They've moved up from the southwest, and they're a special bird of the Lake Apopka North Shore. And ash-throated flycatchers, which we see here or there in the winter. Those have been seen on the Zellwood CBC. And then increasingly, the gray-headed swamp hen. Now, some CBCs around the country include young birders, and it's something that we've thought about and wished we could organize. But now, with our education coordinator, Kathy Rigling, working with Zellwood Elementary, doing a birding club, which was using binoculars that were funded by a grant from National Audubon, the Fledge grant. She's going to have those students do a CBC, and they're within the Zellwood count. Very cool. Now turn to the Wekiva CBC, which includes areas along the Wekiva River, and also some of the developed areas like Lake Mary and so forth. This one began in 1995 with compiler Fred Harden doing it for the first 15 years, and jay.h.exum now compiles and collaborates with Seminole Audubon. And Jay gave me a lot of data that they get 122.3 different species per year average. So that's a little lower. I didn't mention that the Zellwood gets about 150 species. It's one of the higher echelon ones. But the Wekiva gets this number, and some that are very common are little blue heron and yellow rump warbler. And in the ponds, the retention ponds that you would get to survey in like Lake Mary and some of the more developed areas, there's hooded mergansers and sometimes rarer ducks. Now, jay.h.exum has done an analysis of total species over the years and found that its number of species has increased slightly, even despite development. And he thinks that it's due to the growing experience, knowledge, and focus of the zone leaders. They know where to go each year. And of course, eBird adds another element of ease in finding the birds. Jay has analyzed some bird species that are declining, the bobwhite and the loggerhead shrike. And this has been observed in other counts as well. These are grassland birds, and the grassland habitat is one of the ones that has disappeared the most rapidly. Meanwhile, the catbird and tufted titmouse have been increasing. But Jay points out that, thank goodness, there are protected lands in the Wekiva River Basin. And you got your Wekiva Springs State Park on the other side of the Rock Springs Run. You've got Rock Springs Run State Reserve and Seminole State Forest. And the attempt has been to connect these conservation lands to the Ocala Forest. And there's actually a Florida Forever project that's always ongoing to try to buy land to connect for the bears to move, and the bears being an umbrella species that other animal species can come under that. And also the Wekiva River is a national wild and scenic river designation, something that there are two in Florida, the Loxahatchee as well. But this gives it a little more protection. So as Jay points out, thank goodness, and that'll help the bird species in this area continue. Now, a newer CBC is the Bay Lake CBC down in Disney on this Bay Lake, and that's used to be called Discovery Island down here. And that began as Disney's holiday bird count, a Disney-sponsored event. And the first 4 years, it was held on Martin Luther King Jr. weekend in January. So since it was outside the period of the Christmas bird counts, they didn't submit the data. But then it became an actual CBC and volunteers event during the 2014-15 CBC season. And it was started by John Thompton, a very good local birder that works at Disney. And he will always accept help. So you contact him at john.thomton@gmail.com. And he's a good teacher. People who get to go with him individually always enjoy it. And John started not only the Bay Lake CBC, but the Clermont CBC down here over in Clermont. And how it started is that Kathy Brown from B.B. Brown's nursery, where John has done bird surveys and teaches, he asked why they couldn't have a CBC. And so he started one. And that's down at the Florida Scrub Jay Trail and includes a lot of other sites in the Clermont area, the 15-mile diameter circle. And this year will be the 11th year of that CBC. And he readily accepts help. Is how you contact him, john.thomton@gmail.com. I include this nice picture of a vermilion flycatcher because they did see a male vermilion flycatcher last year at a school. And so you never know what is going to turn up any year, and you just get out there and take that one day and count. By the way, traditionally it would be all day, and then there would be a get together in the evening, organized by the compiler, whether at the compiler's house or at a restaurant, or at a particular place where we catered it in. And that was a nice time for everybody to talk and share their observations, and just a gathering of the birders. So if there is that get together available and you're doing one, I would recommend going. And the last one I'm going to profile in our area is the Kissimmee Valley CBC down here. It actually involves the next chapter down, the Kissimmee Valley Audubon Society. And the current compiler is Chris Newton. Here he is leading a trip at the North Shore Birding Festival. He's a wonderful birder and leader and very enthusiastic. And I would recommend contacting him. It's a long-running CBC since 1966. So actually, it's longer running than the ones in Orlando. And Chris has summarized some observations over the years. For instance, back in the beginning, there were no Muscovy ducks or black-bellied whistling ducks. I guess the Muscovies were introduced from aviculture, and the whistling ducks moved up, and possibly also with a little introduction from aviculture. Another thing he points out is that mallard mottled duck hybridization has really proceeded in the area, and it's very hard to find pure mottled ducks. So you can contact Chris at this email, and in a second I'll put up all the CBCs in our area with the contact information, and I'll leave that up. And you may wonder, Orlando Wetlands Park is such a fantastic area. Why don't they have a CBC out there? And in fact, one of our local birders, great local birders, Karen Hamlet, attempted to start a CBC called the Christmas bird count out there by Orlando Wetlands Park. And she just got discouraged. It's a lot of work to be a compiler because most everybody just wanted to do it at Orlando Wetlands Park. They weren't willing to take the sections that were a little bit less desirable. So, but there are instructions. If you want to start a CBC, you just pick up a 15-mile radius that doesn't overlap any of the others. And you could start it if you have the willingness to do the compiling. And a step towards participating in a CBC is participating in monthly bird surveys. And on this bird chat, we are always plugging Kathy's monthly bird surveys at Wekiva and some of the others that Kathy leads. So just consider that a step. And if by chance you contact the compilers for the CBCs and you don't get an answer, invoke Kathy to recommend you if you've been going to the CBCs. Excuse me, if you've been going to her monthly surveys, and then jump right in and contact the compilers. So I'm going to put up the slide of all the local ones, and I hope that you'll get involved this year. It's fun, and you're really contributing to long-term community science.